Let's first go across to Major Marcus Sheff, IDF spokesperson, joining us. Mr. Sheff, I thank you for your time. I do have to begin by asking you, the IDF has released what it says is evidence on how it was a misfire of the Islamic Jihad missile that actually landed in that Gaza hospital. And of course, we've run those images and even that audio clip. Do you want to add anything to it? What more has the IDF found? What more proof are you willing to present to prove that it was not an Israeli missile strike?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. In all honesty, I don't think any more proof is needed. All of the proof which anybody needs in order to see the reality, which is that Palestinian Islamic Jihad, an Iran-backed terrorist organization, fired a salvo of rockets at Israel. One of them misfired. It hit the car park of the hospital. The fuel that was in the rocket exploded with the terrible results that we saw. There is footage from more than one angle that we have all seen, which very clearly shows that. We have seen footage of the kind of crater that their rockets leave, not the kind of crater that a JDAM, that a missile coming from an aircraft creates. There is really absolutely no need for any more evidence. Absolutely anybody who understands these issues is entirely convinced by what we've seen. But, let us understand the reality here. Thousands and thousands of rockets have been fired at Israeli citizens by the Hamas terrorist organization and by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad organization. Close to 7,000 at this point. Something like 450 misfired. It might be more. This is just one of them. And there are people on the other side of these rockets, Israeli civilians, who are being terrorized constantly by these rockets fired into civilian areas, into normal communities.
Right.
Hour after hour, day after day.
Can I ask you that while you may have presented this proof, are you convinced that some of your neighboring countries will accept that? Because we've seen that Mr. Biden's visit with some of these leaders in Jordan was cancelled. We've seen some uproar on the streets around embassies, both Israel and American. We're also seeing, greater calls being made against Israel because of the initial news that Israel was behind this attack. How do you plan to counter that?
Well, I think the first thing that you said, frankly, is the most important here. The initial report, which was hasty, inaccurate, entirely reliant on a terrorist organization. And this is, of course, the problem. News organizations are depending on the reliability of a terrorist organization, which is quite happy to murder civilians, to rape women, and to abduct young and old and drag them back to Gaza. An organization that will do that is an organization that has no compunction in lying to the media. So I think the media really needs to be far more careful before it comes out with statements taken entirely from Hamas, because there are real world consequences.
Okay.
I will say something else, though. As far as the leadership in the region is concerned, there are very smart leaders in the Middle East and beyond. They understand the evidence very, very well. They know exactly what happened. I am convinced that they are convinced, and it is just utterly sad to me that there are people in the region who were misled by the media and who committed really some extremely problematic acts, burning down a synagogue in Tunisia. These are the real life consequences that I'm talking about.
Very quickly, can I ask you, there is a growing expectation of a ground offensive. Could you share more on that, even as some of the world leaders continue to visit Israel?
Well, let me just say that what is necessary is to uproot once and for all the Hamas terror network, its leadership, its infrastructure, its weaponry, absolutely everything that they use in order to wage the terror war which they wage and have waged unremittingly since 2007. You know, Israel withdrew from Gaza in August 2005 with hopes for peace. Hamas took over Gaza in 2007 and has directed all of its energies, all of its efforts at terrorizing Israelis, not feeding its population, educating its population, not building roads. They took water pipes to make bombs from it. Everything that Hamas has done has been terribly negative for the whole region. And I think the IDF knows that now it has absolutely nothing else that it needs to do except make sure that this stops.
I understand that, but people believe that it may not be entirely possible to wipe out Hamas, given that many of its leadership is actually not even in Gaza. And secondly, it could come at a huge civilian collateral. How do you address those issues?
Well, I think in answer to your second point, I think there are civilians involved who absolutely are needing to move. You know, there are tens of thousands of Israelis who have had to leave their homes, children having to leave their schools, families being uprooted extremely quickly because of Hamas terror. I think civilians in Gaza are being instructed to move south to safer areas. It's Hamas who is stopping them. Do you see the pattern here? Hamas using civilians time and time again as people who they hide behind, as people who are tools in the wars that they fight against Israel. The IDF is committed to targeting these Hamas terrorists. It might take time, it might not be easy, but the focus, and it will be backed by intelligence, is Hamas, not civilians.
And you believe that you can actually achieve that goal, that stated objective of dismantling Hamas completely?
I think it will take a great deal of time. I think it will be very delicate, but I think the IDF is absolutely committed to rooting them out once and for all, because I really don't know of any alternative. I do not have a vision of what life in this region looks like with Hamas still governing Gaza.
All right. Major Marcus Sheff, I do thank you for your time. Thanks a lot for speaking to CNN News 18.